I've recorded this video so many times, I don't even know. I don't even know if it's ever gonna end. So, I've been playing season 1 long enough to have an opinion on, um, on sort of how the game is playing, like, sort of the cracks in the foundation now and how they're starting to form, and also if it looks laggy or, like, the audio and video is, like, off in this video that we got going here, it's because 'cause I'm recording, with OBS, while the game is open, and the reason why you don't see more videos of me in game, this is why. Um, but yeah, this is my main account that I used and played with my friends mostly, but also I played another account where I did get to GM as well through solo queue. Uh, so I just wanted to make sure that like I understood the full experience and that it wasn't just bias of just like, okay, well, when you're grouping with friends, does that make it easier? Does that make it harder? Um, so that way I could really like judge it from the full player experience. And I will say that there are times where carrying solo is easier, especially when it comes to competitive games, where if you really want to know like your true rank, solo is the way to play. But there are times when getting through the lower ranks that if you already know you and your friends are not like bronze, silver, gold, grouping makes a lot more sense. But the higher you climb, the more it makes sense to play solo. However, it is a lot more fun playing with friends. Even the losses are more fun when you're playing with friends. So even though I might climb slower, or anybody might climb slower with playing with their friends, it's still a more enjoyable experience. Uh, and also at the same time, if you know your friends are also just really, consistent more than anything, they can stay alive, they can perform their role. Um, Climbing higher is a lot easier because of just that consistency alone. Uh, Now, anyway, I am going to exit out of this because I don't want to have the entire video laggy. And I'll just play one of my games in the background because this is the sort of workaround solution that I've come up with. Uh, Not great, but it'll do. So, the biggest problem I've seen, once again, uh, with why is it doing that? The biggest problem I've seen with support or with the Marvel Rivals as you get higher up in rank is the support class once again. And the issue isn't like any of the heroes individually or even some of their abilities, but rather their ultimates and how they stack together. When there's a lot of sustain during the fights, it's powerful to keep people alive, but it's not as oppressive as Overwatch is. And I think it's because of the fact that there's a greater margin for error for a lot of the heroes on the support side um, for Marvel Rivals. Like Mantis doesn't have great heal output or a lot of heal output. Um, Invisible Woman can still technically miss. Uh, Cloak and Dagger's heal output is basically auto aim, but it's not super high output. Like you can still burst through it. Luna, there's a margin for error. So a lot of what I've experienced, like when there's triple support, it's not oppressive when there's just three supports. In fact, I feel like I might be wrong, but I feel like I have options when I'm fighting them without their ultimates. The problem comes when you start fighting them with their ultimates because you can hold and maintain momentum on your side where like even if you lose the first fight because you have three support and you don't have enough damage output, the moment that you start to stagger your big defensive ultimates back to back to back, uh, you start to shut down what the enemy team can do. And realistically, this is a game about objectives. It's not about elims, right? So there's really no reason to even need to go for kills other than just to make sure you can secure the objective. But hypothetically, let's say you have ultimates that um, make it so you can't die, right? If all you do is hold space, like say you're holding this payload here, and all you do is you hold space and you just don't play risky enough to ever die and you just sustain through everything. And then when the ultimates are up, you do your best to try and eliminate kill get kills and eliminations to then stagger the enemy enough to where they have to reset and try again, there's not much that you can do. And I've experienced this when the higher you climb and the better people get at like staggering those ultimates, with how miserable it is to where you could make, you know, you could try and make all the plays you want in the world, but by the time that you have your ultimate, there's already another support ultimate built up. And I will say that like supports build ultimates way faster than DPS do. Uh, a lot of times, whether I'm playing support or my friends are playing support, I'll have like 50% of my ult charge, because of the fact that building that ultimate usually involves me taking a risk of being up close to do the damage. Whereas healing, you take less risk and you're able to heal a lot more of the damage safely. And so a lot of times my friends will get ultimates within, by the time I get 50%, they're already full and they're already using their ultimate. And they can just snap it right away. And the key is to basically get your support ult as fast as humanly possible and then pop it immediately so you win that first fight and try and gain that momentum. But what I really was feeling and what I was trying to figure out while I was playing this game was, it's so fun because of the fact that it feels like early Overwatch. Everything is wacky, everything is silly, a lot of stuff is broken, a lot of stuff dies really quickly, and that's what I enjoy about it. But then like when there's triple support and 3 defensive ultimates that can stack on top of each other, especially when it's Luna, Cloak and Dagger, and Loki. And Loki is not all that oppressive, even though he's got an immortality. Like, he's not the worst support because of the fact that, yes, he's got an immortality. Yes, he's kind of tricky, but also at the same time, he's not one of the best duelists in the game with the most survivability, and he's not that easy to play. But Loki copies ultimates. And when you can copy a Luna, then you've got 2 broken ultimates that you can use back to back. So for 12 seconds, you can't fight, you can't do anything. And then he gets to copy that ultimate again. So then it's 24 seconds that you can't get to, you just don't get to play. And then you have Sue Storm or Cloak and Dagger. Like, Sue's not as bad as like Cloak and Dagger or Luna are right now. But it's still sort of this problem that Marvel Rivals has backed themselves into a corner with that I see in the future, where every one of their abilities for their ultimates, for the most part, is, AoE, sustain, AoE damage of some kind, and everything is sort of like more AoE. Like, Marvel Rivals is a more casual version of a hero-based shooter, but that doesn't mean it's less fun. It just means that a lot of the stuff is just sort of easier to do. It's about timing those ultimates. But the problem is when the ultimates happen and charge so quickly, you don't really have it doesn't really feel meaningful and impactful to do things in between those ultimates. And it sucks when it feels like there's not much that you can do, especially like in high-low, like in this game here, I think is high diamond, low GM. I am just constantly playing around defensive ultimates. And luckily, this is one of the games that's a good one because of the fact that there's only 2 defensive ultimates. But if there's 3, I just get shut down completely. And then it's just a game of Rock'em Sock'em Robots where it feels like I'm playing Overwatch Season 8. And it's just about sustaining through everything. It gets very boring, very dull, very fast. And this high actiony combat that happens in between the ultimates is more exciting to me. But you can see here, like the moment that like Luna casts her ult, it's basically, okay, stop fighting and just survive. Because we can't kill through it. We know that we can't. There's no counterplay to it unless we have a Magneto ult. And there's no ultimate specifically that can counter them except for maybe Moon Knight. I've seen sometimes you can do like Groot and Moon Knight combo, but I've also had that not work before and they've sustained through it. So it all just depends. But it's like there's nothing consistent, right? There's no like way to like specifically outplay. So the key is to just not play. And I'm totally fine with the idea of having big defensive ultimates that are really strong. It also helps to counter things like Groot ultimate. But the problem is the duration of how long they're up and how quickly that they can charge. Because I have a feeling, and I might be wrong, but I have a feeling that if the ultimates didn't charge as quickly, triple support might not be as oppressive because the problem with these supports isn't like their individual kits. Uh, it's the fact that they can get their ults so quickly that they can just you never there's never a point in time where you feel that there's a good time to like use your ultimate um or feel like you could probably get enough elims to actually make space, right? And that's going to be and I've seen people like Captain America players who just did nothing but sit on the payload the entire time and never got off because of the fact that they knew how to sustain really, really well and stay alive and get in and get out and just literally do nothing but be a nuisance at holding the objective hostage. And that's really smart because it's how you play the game. But like it's really frustrating when some of the sustain in the game keeps you from pushing or taking objectives. Uh, so I think where we go from here, or where Marvel Rivals goes from here, is going to be interesting because of the fact that this will be a good time to see how they handle the problem that Overwatch has always had a big issue with which was like the sustain issue. Um, and that Overwatch went more leaning more into the hard sustain, uh, play denying sort of route. And now Marvel Rivals is basically because like in high elo games, a lot of people are like, as soon as you get in there, they're like, let's play triple support, let's play triple support. And I really do not want to play triple support. I will ban Cloak and Dagger and Luna just to avoid playing triple support. Uh, but it'll be interesting to see where they go from here because that problem is already starting to peek its head through. And it's a problem that, to me personally, I'm not entirely sure if there is a perfect answer for it, but I do know that in its current state, the reason why these heroes are frustrating isn't their kits like in Overwatch. It's just their ultimates and how quickly they happen and how quickly they come up. And another possible solution for that would be that as you rank up, you have maybe different rules. And I've thought about this for Overwatch as well. But like as you get into Diamond, you know that you now have like picks and bans, right? Well, perhaps if you're in like, you know, plat and upwards, you have picks and bans. And plat and upwards, you also have a completely different competitive category where now your ultimates charge slower. So lower elo players can have their own sort of category that they have a different rule set and they're used to their ults charging a certain rate where so it helps them while they're still sort of like learning and understanding the game. And then the higher elo players who can charge ultimates really fast because like even as a DPS player, I charge my ultimate as Psylocke really quick. There are times I've used my ultimate, the fight's continued on, and by the time the fight ends, I still have 50% of my next ultimate. So I'll have it at some point during the next fight, which is, don't get me wrong, like the ultimates are powerful, but it's just when they can happen that quickly and they have that much game changing potential at times, it can feel really oppressive. Whereas like the interesting thing about this game, it isn't the ultimates or the big plays that ways. They are cool though. Like I do like the big plays and the wacky ultimate combinations, but the individual kits and how they play, it like Psylocke's invisibility and using her dashes and repositioning is way more exciting to me than me using my ultimate. And I want to see more of that aspect pushed into the game rather than the focus on it always being about like the ultimates and how we use those. Because right now, I will say that like in high elo, those defensive ultimates are so strong that the goal a lot of times that I use my Psylocke ultimate for isn't to get kills, but to get the supports to panic ult and use two defensive ults at the same time, and hopefully give my team an open opportunity, uh, to attack. And that's not really fun because like the moment that your team accidentally uses two defensive ultimates at the same time, and you know that you don't have one for the following fight after, you pretty much know that that fight is lost. Like even if you survive, they're going to put pressure you off the point, and you can't sustain or stay alive through it. because the trick of like hitting them with like a Magneto alt uh, isn't consistent. Hitting them with a Iron Man alt isn't consistent, and even then, like as you try to Magneto alt like a cloak and dagger, people have gotten used to either learning how to hide, to shield it, or to bubble it from an ally Magneto. Like there's ways around it. So uh, there's nothing really consistent in terms of counterplay, and everything I've talked about before. Once again, like in a lot of my videos, predictive abilities feel fair, proactive abilities feel fair, reactive abilities are not fun to play against. And while I understand that there is a place for defensive ultimates, um, we have to be careful in PvP settings in how powerful those are and how quickly you can gain access to them. Because of the fact that a lot of people I have seen, even in high low games, have learned to rely on them so much that they don't understand how to reposition themselves better or how to position themselves without saying like, "Oh, I need someone to bail me out with this ability." It's the same problem as Overwatch. Like if the enemy team has a Suzu and I don't have a Suzu, then it feels unfair because of the fact that they get bailed out of their mistake and I have nothing to bail me out of mine, and I have to play perfectly and that person does not. Uh, and it's the same for the defensive ultimates here. With how quickly they charge and how quickly they come up, it just feels unfair when you're like, okay, I'm about to kill someone and there's a Luna ult. I'm about to kill someone and there's a Cloak and Dagger out. And it's like, oh, I'm about to kill someone and there's a copied Luna ult. You're like, those are the games that are the least fun for me. Uh, so yeah, I think that for the next season, what I would really like to see, or even just the mid-season patch, is nerfing the alt charge time on everything across the board. Supports mostly, but across the board, everybody needs to have a little bit slower alt charge. So that way, those individual picks between those ultimates just matter more. But yeah, anyway, that's what I've observed. And I'd be curious if there's anybody else who's played at like other ranks, uh, the lower ranks and like what your average experience is. If you have, uh, dealt with triple support, if it's oppressive at low levels or if it's just a high elo thing, like, do you find it's much of an issue? Um, do you feel the need to play it? Does it have an impact on how much fun you're having at all? Because of the fact that I understand from my perspective, but um I don't know what it's like for, the rest of the player base, and I'd be curious to see if it varies from mine. Anyway, uh, those are my thoughts. I have some more on both Rivals and Overwatch, and I'm sure I'll make more videos on that stuff soon. Because there's in games, there's always ways to improve and always ways they make things better, and I will keep trying to come up with new ways to improve all sorts of games. Anyway, yeah, let me know what you guys think.